Hello there, World of Tankers. I'm Blitz, and today me talking about high explosive ammunition. Now, I'm not going to be making a video on how to use HE, but this video is going to be on is high explosive more important than just using your standard ammunition in-game. As you can see, I currently have 34 high explosive rounds loaded, and I have no AP or no premium ammunition, which normally isn't something you want to have loaded in an account, or is it? Now, as many of you guys know, I like to keep an eye on World of Tanks PC as well, and there's a YouTuber called Quickybaby. A lot of you probably know who he is. If you don't, I'll actually leave a link to his channel in the description down below because I think he is an excellent YouTuber, but he makes videos all about World of Tanks PC, and yesterday he posted a video on him only using high explosive rounds, and I was like, well, if he said that it's actually somewhat decent using only high explosive in World of Tanks PC, what is it going to be like in Blitz? So I went into Liberty, playing the WZ-113, and then the second game you're going to see I played in the E100, and I wanted to see, can you actually do more effective running high explosive, not exposing as much of your armor, trying to shoot at weak spots, just shooting at the enemy, doing your best, and seeing if you can actually get more damage out this way than playing a normal game. Now you can see, first game I got here is, of course, in the WZ-113, and I picked this tank because I thought it had a decent amount of high explosive damage. I think it's at 500, as well, very quick reload, which means you're going to be able to punish the enemy with non-stop spam of high explosive. However, I learned that quickly, using a tank that doesn't have a huge alpha like 500 really isn't super effective. It's not super bad when you're aiming at tanks that are weaker, like medium tanks. You can probably take about 200 off on average, 150 to 200 every shot. And as well, lightly armored heavies like a 2 and 5B, you could probably shoot around the turret and still take 200 off if you're just shooting at the top. But the issue is when you're going up against a tank like this VK-72 you're seeing here, yeah, things get a little bit iffy. However, there are some very, very easy weak spots, even on some of the most heavily armored tanks in the game. Now, as you can see, right below the gun of the tank is the grill of the vehicle. That's where the engine is. That's where actually the fuel is, of course. So if you shoot that and you use a high explosive round, and it actually does a decent amount of damage, there's also a very high possibility that you're going to light the tank on fire. Now, when I was running in this battle here, I didn't think my tank was tall enough to actually hit that plate effectively, so I was just trying to shoot at the side, because I'm like, you know what, the VK side armor isn't that thick. But it turns out it's a lot thicker than I thought, because you can see using HE is not super effective when you're trying to pen through, what is it, 120 millimeters of side armor. It's not going to work 99% of the time. I'm only taking 50, 60 damage off, and the luckiest I've got so far, I think, was 100. So it's very, very hard to get a lot of damage out. But you can see, when I sort of splashed near the grill of the tank, it did more damage. Now, the reason high explosive works like that is because when it explodes, it leaves these little fragments. And the size of the caliber of the gun leaves larger or smaller fragments depending on the damage it's calculated. But it tries to find the weakest spot of armor on the tank. Of course, there's no shell normalization with this, so you can shoot at any angle, and as long as you are able to pen it, it's easily going to get through the armor of the tank, or it's going to damage it. Now you can see here, I finally realized, hey, I can shoot the grill of that tank, and it's taken 150 off every time. Now that's not that bad, judging that I'm not aiming really that much, just taking 150 off every single time. Not only that, you can see I've damaged his aimer, his gunner, his commander. I've pretty much damaged everything on his tank. And that's something that's really nasty about the HE, as I said, is it damages every single module. You're pretty much putting the enemy through pain and suffering every single shot. And you can see it's actually working on this VK. Now, he's not the best of players, I will say that. If I was in that VK, I probably would have been dead a long time ago. But you can see using HE is working. I'm pretty much taking on a full health German Super Heavy. Going to wedge him up there again, another HE right in the grill. Now, the grill is a weak spot, but the weakest spot for me is also right in the turret ring. You're going to see I'm going to try and do that here with the WZ-12 on. I don't know why that shot only did 3 there. That was something that really baffled me. But you're going to notice, as soon as this 121 tries to face hug me, I'm going to shoot him right in the turret ring, and it does a decent amount of damage, 280. And if you manage to hit a tank's turret ring, it's pretty consistent on doing that amount of damage with any 120 millimeter. And that's not too bad if you're going up against a tank that you can't hit the lower plate on. If you're up against like an E5, and it's doing a pretty good job of face hugging, you can't pen it with premium ammo, just shoot it right in the turret ring, and you're going to take off 300 average damage. And that's something that's really impressive, judging that it's only about 100 less damage than your standard ammunition. And then I was thinking, you know what, I'm going to pull out the E100 because, of course, if you have a bigger caliber, not only does it have more high explosive penetration, it's got a lot more damage. And I actually find myself always using a lot of high explosive ammo in a tank like the E100, and that's something that's really important, and HE is so underrated. On pretty much all the tanks in the game that I play, unless they just have awful high explosive penetration, I run a minimum of 10 HE shells. In fact, I run more HE on most of my tanks than I do premium ammo, and the reason for that being is because people just don't understand how effective it can be in-game. If I'm running up against an IS-4 that's side-scraping in the tank like the E100, I'm not going to be able to pen it with my heat round, it's going to get absorbed in the spaced armor. I'm not going to be able to shoot an AP because, of course, it's not going to do anything, it's less pen than my heat round. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm just going to load an HE shell and shoot it right at their tracks, because not only is it going to stop their vehicle dead in place, it's going to break their track, they're going to have to repair that, then they're going to have to pull out and try and snap my tank while I'm already behind cover, and I've taken 300 to 400 damage right off their tank without even having to expose myself, losing any of my hit points. And that's something that you can really easily do. You saw there, I barely even aimed at that E6, domed him right on the top, almost took 500 off him. If I was using a standard AP shell, I doubt that would have even hit the top of his tank and penned it. So using HG there was actually the right choice. And that's something that's just really funny. And again here, this was just a really lucky shot for me. I managed to dome that Sheridan, took 900 HP right off him. That made my day. And HE, again, it's just something that's really, really useful. Although I will say I wouldn't suggest to shoot HE ever at a Sheridan unless you do have the side of its turret like that, because 99% of the time it's really not going to work. Now, as I said, when you want to shoot at the turret ring of a tank, you definitely don't want to hit the turret of it, because usually tanks' turrets are the most armored spot. In real life, that's where the people are sitting half the time, especially the gunner. You don't want the gunner dying, and you don't want your ammo exploding. So tanks are usually the most armored in the turret, which makes sense. So you don't want to just shoot the turret of a vehicle. You're going to notice here, I'm going to try and aim down. Again, as I've always said, aim at the grill of the tank. So I'm going to wedge my gun right underneath that turret, snap the shell right in there in that little crack, and there you go, 400 damage. And that's just an easy example of how effective HE can actually be in the right scenario. Now, obviously, I could have used an AP shell there, but you can see that if you're out of AP, or you are in a scenario where you're not able to get a shell out correctly, HE works 99% of the time because you don't have to worry about it not damaging people. With a 152, and this shot again was a really lucky one here, but with any 152, you pretty much are guaranteed to do 300 to 400 damage on any enemy you're aiming at. Even if it doesn't pen and it's up against a mouse, you're still taking 300 to 400 off. In fact, a lot of people that are in tournaments, especially the higher up clans, if you'll ever pay attention, people that are camping in tank destroyers and they're aiming at a mouse, 50% of the time they'll just shoot an HE shell right at the turret. And the reason for that being is because if you hit right on the grill of the tank where the engine is, and you aim right in between that and the turret ring, it's going to do about 500 average damage with a tank like an E100. Now, if you're using a Jagdpanzer, it's going to do about 600 to 700 average. So you're only doing about 100 less damage than your normal, damage in the tank. And then you have to remember that because it's high explosive, it is extremely damaging to modules. And when you're shooting the engine deck of a vehicle like the mouse, the fuel is there. So what happens is not only do you damage the tank, you're also lighting it on fire. That's why you saw there I lit that T95E6 on fire. HE is just super, super damaging to modules. Even if you don't pen in a tank like the E100, if you know where some of the weaker spots are on vehicles and where their modules are, you can actually end up ammo racking them, doing a lot more effective than you really would think in a vehicle like the E100 or a WZ-113 with using high explosive. Now this game using only HE, I did 4,850 damage, which really just completely rocked my day because I had no clue how you could actually get that much damage out with an HE shell. I was expecting maybe 2,000, 3,000 if I'm really, really lucky. I sort of camp, just shoot HE at everybody that comes around. We're probably going to lose. Now, we did lose that game, but that wasn't because of me. In fact, I was the most effective player on the team, which is kind of sad that I only used high explosive. But as you saw, it worked. Although, I'm going to say this now, do not take this as advice to use high explosive. In fact, I played a game after this just to prove to myself that HE isn't more effective, and I did 5,200 damage in the E100. So, using HE, while it can be fun, and this was actually a fun concept, I had a lot of fun doing it, yeah, I would never ever suggest to only spam HE. Even if you're running an E100 or a 183, just use your standard ammo. You're going to pen your shells, you're going to do way better. But of course, if you're in a scenario where you can't pen that tank and it's using its turret armor and you don't have a shot on it, shoot it with HE right in the turret ring and you're going to take 200 to 300 off. Now, don't do that advice in any of the medium tanks because they don't really have a super high damaging gun. They only have 105 millimeter, which HE, yeah, it's only going to do about 400 average. And then when you put in all the armor and everything like that, you're probably going to do about 100 average damage with your HE. But then just load heat and try and pen the shell, back up, you're quick. But for using a big bad heavy like a Jagdpanther, 50% of the time, if I can't pen the tank and it's side scraping, I'll just shoot an HE and take 500 off, back away. Same thing for a side scraping, just hit them with an HE, back up to your team, and it's something that's really nasty you can do. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. As always, if you did, make sure to smash that like button down below. If you didn't like it, you know what to do. Let me know in the comments down below why you didn't like it. If you're not subscribed already, make sure to subscribe. And other than that, guys, I'll see you in the next one. I hope you all are safe out there. Do well.